Howdy, howdy, and welcome back to another Workshop Wednesday. This time it's a strategy session, and we're talking about the power of marketing forward. Of course, if this is your first Workshop Wednesday, welcome. My name is Chris Mercer. I do go by Mercer, and I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io, where maybe you came from us from Digital Marketer, maybe you saw some of our stuff at CXL Institute, maybe from Social Media Examiner, or maybe you're already a member of measurementmarketing.io. Either way, however you found us, we're glad you're here. Welcome aboard. Our job is to help people just like you figure out how to use measurement tools, specifically analytics and Tag Manager, Data Studio, maybe even a little bit of Facebook analytics in there. And we do that using the measurement marketing framework. Now, we're going to cover this framework because it puts today's training in context. The framework is really 5 key pillars. There's planning, building, reporting, forecasting, and optimizing. So planning is where you figure out what's important to measure and what you're going to do with the stuff that you actually get from all those measurements. Building is when you actually set everything up. Reporting is where you, of course, create the reports and the dashboard so you can get the answers to the questions that you've asked. Then forecasting, which we will talk about today. Today, it's very important on forecasting. And then, of course, once you have your forecast, you can measure what's working and what's not, and that will tell you where you should be optimizing. So that's how the whole framework works together. Now, with all of these trainings, just cover one new concept is all you're really looking for. That's your goal. Don't worry about hanging on to every little thing that I talk about here because you can rewatch these workshops over and over and over again, which is why we make them publicly available for you. All right. With that, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Strategy session, the power of marketing forward. Now, as this is a strategy session, some of our workshops, we just jump right into analytics or we take a look at Tag Manager and show you some cool stuff, maybe with Data Studio. But today it's a strategy session. So it's really for those of you who might not really be implementers at heart, but you need to think about how you're going to think about stuff, right? It's the actual working on your process. And so we're going to step back a little bit and talk about strategy, about how we actually figure out what our results are. And we're going to liken this to baking. So let's assume that we are watching a baker at work, and this baker grabs a bunch of ingredients, and then this baker pops them in a bowl, starts mixing them together, just sort of at random. Then they throw it in the oven for a random amount of time, and then they ask the question, okay, let's find out what happened. Did I get a cookie? Did I bake a cake? Did I maybe end up with macaroons? Did I end up with bagels? Or did I just make a mess? And then they go, well, I really wanted chocolate cake and I didn't get chocolate cake. I ended up with a mess. So let me go try again. And then you watch this baker and they go back and they grab a bunch of different random ingredients. And then they start mixing them together again in some different random way. And then they start baking them in an oven again for some different random amount of time at a random temperature. And then they ask themselves again, what happened? Okay, did I get a cookie? Did I get a chocolate cake? Did I get macaroons or did I get a bagel or did I just make a mess? And if you saw them doing this again and again and again, you would have to think to yourself, okay, this baking strategy probably isn't going to work, right? This baking strategy wouldn't work because there's a huge, huge thing that's missing here. What's missing from this baker strategy is a recipe. And so the recipe is actually what helps them to figure out what ingredients they need to get. The recipe is what helps them figure out how they should put the ingredients together, in what order, and how they're going to mix them together and process them. The recipe actually guides how long they're supposed to bake it for. How long do they wait until the product should be finished? And the recipe is what guides them along the way to ultimately to the destination to tell them, this is what good looks like. You should be ending up with something that looks kind of like this chocolate cake. And that's how baking is done. That's how everything is done. That strategy actually works when you follow a recipe. And the recipe is key to all of this. So instead of asking what happened all the time, they're not asking what happened all the time because they're using the recipe. They are instead going along the way saying, okay, did this work like it was supposed to? I followed the recipe. Did I get what the recipe told me I was supposed to get? And that's a huge, huge difference in baking. You're going to get completely different results. And I would venture to say that if you're trying to bake chocolate cake, you'll get a lot more things that look like chocolate cake if you follow the recipe. Now, let's bring this back a little bit closer to home where you and I live, and we're in the world of online marketing. And so we have our various ingredients. We've got our website, we have our offers, we've got our products and services, we have our traffic, right? We have our copywriting, we have our CRMs, we have all the stuff that we're doing, the messaging and the email and everything else. We have all the different ingredients. And just like bakers, we do mix those ingredients together in the actual process of running paid traffic and, measuring our results and fulfilling products and services, and the CRM, collecting the money back and forth, and everything else that we do to actually make the business of business work. And just like our bakers, we are jumping into the end result. We're opening up the oven, so to speak. And our oven here is really something like Google Analytics, a platform like that, where you can see the numbers and sort of see what your results are. So whatever you use, ideally it's something like Analytics or Google Data Studio dashboards that you're using, hopefully at this point. But if you're not, it's whatever you're using, your CRM's reports, your spreadsheets, whatever it is. And you're going in there going, okay, what happened? And that's a problem, because just like the baking strategy, this whole what happened thing doesn't really work that well for marketing. Now, if I asked you, okay, well, what happened? A question you might ask is like, how many sales did we make? That's a what happened type of question, but it seems kind of normal to ask that. It also seems kind of normal to ask, well, how are my visitors using my site? All right, so how are the visitors actually going back and using my site? That's a pretty normal question I think most people will ask. Maybe you're looking at trends, like, oh, I need to know where we are year over year, or month over month, or week over week, but you're always going back and you're asking what happened. And so if I came to you and said, okay, would this marketing strategy work? If you ask yourself those questions, a very natural reaction would be to say, yeah, of course it would work. And yet, what I just showed you from the business standpoint, from the marketing standpoint, that marketing strategy of asking what happened, always going back in the past and looking at what happened, is the exact same thing as the baking strategy. Right? So hang with me here. If you're already thinking like, no, it's slightly different, I'm going to hopefully prove to you that there is another way. That's a slight change of how to look at this, but will give you radically improved results in your own marketing. So instead of going back all the time, and instead of asking what happened, because remember, this is the key question. This is the question we want to avoid asking. We don't want to ask what happened. Instead, right, this marketing strategy, would it really, really work? What we really want to do is figure out what's missing. And to figure out what's missing, it's that recipe, because I never mentioned the recipe. Now, what is a recipe in business terms? What is the recipe in this marketing example, in this marketing way of looking at things? Well, the recipe is your forecast. You have to have a forecast. You have to have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. You have to. There is no other option around it. Now, in the beginning, you typically don't. I didn't. I know I didn't when I started out. I didn't realize I needed one. I just sort of put a bunch of stuff together, and that would always go back into my numbers and say, okay, what just happened? And is that what, I don't know, like, okay, is that good? Is that bad? I'm not sure. You know what? I don't know what to do with this. I'll come back to it later. And that's what a lot of people do. They see a bunch of data. It becomes just information for information's sake. It kind of gets overwhelming. There is no real clear answer and direction. And that's because they're not using a recipe, meaning they're not using a forecast. So when you have a forecast, you can actually ask this question. In fact, you cannot answer this question unless you have a forecast. So did it work like it was supposed to? I have to have an idea of what that supposed to is. I have to have an idea of what good looks like in order for me to actually answer it. And this is that whole concept of marketing forward. That is, instead of looking back at our data all the time, we are looking forward going, hey, did this work like it was supposed to work? So instead of asking a question like, how are visitors using the site, which is kind of a looking back, sort of what happened, old school, old style, now that you know about it, old way of looking at things. Instead, we're not going to ask questions like this anymore, because that is always about what happened. Instead, we need to ask the question in some way that is basically like, hey, did it work like it was supposed to? So instead of asking that, you might say, okay, as part of our forecast, 5% of our homepage visitors should opt in. And then you go into your reports and you go, did they? Is this homepage performing as expected? We get asked a lot sometimes when people come to us for measurement, and they'll say, well, I really need to know like what people are doing on our homepage. My first question is, what did you plan for them to do? What were they supposed to do on the homepage? That is marketing forward. And so an example, again, of marketing forward, 5% of my homepage visitors should opt in. Did they? Now, that's marketing forward. An old school question, how many sales did we make? Again, seems totally legitimate until you realize there are better ways to do this. You're not marketing forward when you ask a question like this. You're looking back in your data all the time. But when you market forward, instead of asking this sort of question, you ask a question like this. We should have sold 100 units last week. Did we? Like that was the projection for last week's sales. Did we? So when Monday rolls around, you look back at the previous week, you say, previous week should have done 100. Did it do 100? Did it do as expected? Did it work like it was supposed to? Another example of kind of doing that along the same way of tracking sales is you might say, well, remember results and how. We talk about results and how at measurementmarketing.io. You got to know your results and you got to know how you're getting those results. One of those how metrics might be cart abandonment rate, to which you could say, well, listen, our cart abandonment rate should be between 55 and 65%. Is it? Did it stay within that rate? right? Because you might see that maybe sales, the units that you thought were 100 and it came, maybe you only sold 50. And so you go to your cart abandon rate. Is it because cart abandon rate was too high? It should be between here. Was it? And all you're asking in this way, you're asking, did this thing work like it was supposed to, like we predicted, like we forecasted, because you're marketing forward. That's what marketing forward is all about. The age-old question, how much money did we make? Again, this is a what happened question. It is not going to be as useful for you. Now, will you get an answer? Sure. But is there inherent action behind that answer? There's not. Other than, this is a bad thing. Like we made a bunch of money. We made a little bit of money. There's not really anything you can do with that. So we stop asking these what happened style questions, and instead we put it in the style of did it work like it was supposed to, which is really, in this example, might be, hey, we expected to bring in 10,500. Did we? Right? So maybe it was last month or last week or yesterday or last hour, whatever the thing was. But it's, hey, we expected to bring in this. Did we? So our good was 10,500. Did we hit what we thought we were going to hit? And if not, then let's go figure out what our how metrics are. Here's how they were supposed to work. Did they work like that? And if they didn't, guess what? We now know what to do. We know where this funnel is not working, where this customer journey is leaking our customers, and where we can go fix and adjust. And then we can focus our resources to improve things because we're going to know exactly what's not working. And that's that whole power behind marketing forward. Another example of this question might be, we should average between $100 to $150 per sale. Are we? Because you're going to have a range. All of these typically have some sort of range to them. But when you're marketing forward, you're always saying, this is what it should look like. Does it look like that? Here's what we expected to happen. Did it happen? Here's what I forecasted the result was going to be. Did I hit this result? And you can do this in terms of results and how. So you can do it in terms of your sales and your leads, whatever your final thing is that you're trying to accomplish from a marketing standpoint, but then also your how metrics. So how many people actually landed on the page? We expected to have 1,000 people see our offer. Did 1,000 people see the offer, or did only 500 people see the offer? Of the people that saw the offer, we expected 10% of them to go to the cart. Did 10% of them go to the cart, or did 50% go to the cart, or did 2% go to the cart? Because in those answers, that's action. And of course, ultimately, you would end up at a question like this where you can say, hey, we should be averaging between $100 and $150 per sale in our cart, our average cart. Is that what happened? Is that still our average cart volume, or did things decrease or increase? And then again, you can go back into your how metrics and you'll see how that happened so that you can either scale out the stuff that's working or fix the stuff that's not. That is the idea of marketing forward. So it's a very, very subtle shift, but it's a very important concept for you to keep into your own culture, but also in the culture of your company and the culture of your team. Have everybody in your team marketing forward. So it's not, hey, we just got to go to get our numbers so I can figure out what happened, because that's not going to be useful for you. You've probably even tried that before. It's not useful. But instead, being able to go back into the numbers with that expectation, with a question in mind. So you are armed with a question in mind, and you go back and you say, okay, here's how it's supposed to work. Did it work like that? Because that's where the real learning comes from, this idea of marketing forward. Another question that might be the old style question, hey, did our customers come back? Are we retaining members? That sort of stuff. Not really useful. It's all what happened stuff. And who really cares what the answer is, because there is no inherent action there. But when you say something like, or when you ask a better question to get better results, we say something like, well, retention rates should be around 80%. Are they? Then you go back and you look at your retention reports and you find out, hey, my retention rate's at 50%. Okay, something's up. Let's go take a look at what it was. Or the retention rate's at 90%. Hey, high fives all around. We're doing a great job. But you know the action you can take because you have an idea of this way of asking a question. Did it work like it was supposed to? That's the whole concept of marketing forward. Is really asking this question. Did it work like it was supposed to? And another way to sort of simplify this, if you want, is to ask it like this. Did it work as planned? That's all this is. That's all a forecast is another version of a plan, right? A forecast is, here's how this thing is supposed to work. Here's the results I'm supposed to get. Here's how I think I'm going to get those results. So I have my results and how, and I forecast that out. And when I have my forecast, I can measure against my forecast. That will tell me where to optimize, but I'm always facing forward. And if you think about it, driving a car, when you're driving a car, I pretty much will guarantee that you have not driven a car backward for any long period of time. And maybe you have a little bit where you had to put the car in reverse and you sort of twist around and you maybe use the rearview mirror or the camera, or you're turning all the way around back in the day when we didn't have that fancy technology to show us how to drive backward. But when you twist around and you're putting the car in reverse and you're steering it, it feels a little funky. You can get the car to move kind of where you need it to go, but you sure can't do that for a 35-mile trip because it's going to feel too awkward. It's going to take too long. You can't really go that fast. Car's not built to do that. And your business is the same way. Just like a car, when you put it forward, you go through, you can see the windshield and you go, cool, here's where I'm headed, right? That's the same way you can drive your business. You can drive your marketing. You look through the windshield saying, here's where I'm trying to get to. Did I get there? And if it's not, if you didn't hit it, that's okay. At least you get some feedback, and you're going to understand why you didn't hit it, so you can make adjustments so you can hit it the next time or the next time or the next time. But that's how business is done. You market forward, and that's how you're going to get much, much better results when you adopt that market forward mindset. And again, I didn't start marketing forward when I started out because I didn't know it was a thing I had to do. I didn't look at the world that way. I looked at the world like everybody else does, probably like you have in the past, which was looking back and going, okay, I need to go look at my data so I can figure out what's working and what's not. But that's all what happens stuff. But when I started saying, okay, instead of just looking at my data and seeing a bunch of random numbers that don't really mean anything, I'm going to start marketing forward. I'm going to ask questions like, okay, I should have sold 3 units. Did I sell 3 units? I should have sold $3,000 worth of stuff. Did I sell $3,000 worth of stuff? I should have had 10,000 people see that ad. Did 10,000 people see that ad? And until when I started doing that, it became instantly apparent because I was marketing forward, just like driving a car. It became instantly easier, instantly apparent, and I knew exactly what actions I should take to get right to where I wanted to go. And that's the whole concept. You're going to use your forecasts to market forward. Now, if you do not have a forecast, sadly, we don't have the time to cover that. But it is time for you to build one. So in this workshop, we're not going to cover about how to build a forecast. We have other workshops for that. We also have, for those of you that are already members, I will say go into the Win Courses section. And in the Win Courses section, if you currently scroll down, you'll see Win Forecasting Revenue Results, where we talk all about that. So you can go into that particular course and learn about setting up your forecasting. It's also available in some of the Data Studio courses. So we'll talk about Data Studio. If you go back into the Win Courses section, there's a whole Data Studio section where we cover, how to build this out and how to make sure that your Data Studio has forecasts. It's in Beyond Basics, so you can take a look at that. And you can see how that's done so you can actually see your dashboards and your reporting. In fact, let me just show this to you. I'm going to bring this up. I wasn't actually going to do this, so I'm going to give it just a second to load here. But I'm going to pull up a Data Studio report. I want you to see kind of how we do this in a real-world marketing standpoint. Now, again, as a strategist, maybe you don't necessarily have to go back and build this, right? It's not your job to go back and build it. But I want you to have an idea of, for an implementer, if you're working with your implementation team, have an idea of what to ask for. Okay, so this is, again, I want you to see kind of what this potentially could look like as we go through here. So as I pull this over, I'm going to give it a second to load up. I'm going to make sure I find the exact right one for you. And this is where I wait for the internet to catch up with us. This is the part I love about doing these workshops live, and why we like to edit them for our members, so we can cut out all this fun little stuff. All right, so as I pull this up, and it should be more than another 20 seconds. I'm almost there into the right spot that I'm looking for. Okay, this should basically be where we need to go. So I'm going to pull this over here. Okay, so here's some examples of kind of a dashboard that we built that has this results and how concept coming through. So we've got Win Monthly Pass as a program. I can come through and I can see my results, which is where we ended up, and I can see how I'm achieving those results as I come through. And with Data Studio, we have them conditionally formatted. So where's my forecast? Right there. It says goal 8 to 12%, because that's how that stage should go. I see a goal right in here of 60 to 75%. So I can see where I'm supposed to be and if I'm better or worse than where I need to be. So I have my forecast. This is another way of forecasting with something we call eyes on the journey, where we measure the actual behaviors, the conversation that is happening with that page between the users on that page and the page itself, between the website itself. Here's scroll. So we can kind of get an idea of what goal would be. For us, it's going to be about 70%. That's a forecast here. It's going to be between 90 and 100%. Is where we're going to end up for this page. So I'm happy if it's anything above 90. So in this case, 99 is actually pretty good during the state range. Other programs don't do that. Other programs are lower than 90, in which case we have to change our copy or change our lead because it tells us that, because it doesn't match our forecasts. So you can forecast everything. It's the beauty of numbers. It's why I love numbers so much, because they will not lie to you. A fact is a fact is a fact. A number is a number is a number. They will just tell you what the truth is. It's up to you to listen. If you don't want to listen, that's fine. But numbers will tell you the way. They will chart you the way and say, hey, this thing's not working so well. This thing's kind of working. This thing's not working so well, right? And it'll show you that stuff so that you can focus on where you need to focus on. And the better you get at measurement as a company, even if it's not you, even if you're the strategist, the better that you get at measurement, at actually building these forecasts, at measuring for the conversation that's happening on the page, which of course we can totally help you with at measuremarketing.io, then you can actually start to understand and get action. And when you know what you can do next, it eliminates all of this weird gut, like looking at the data, not sure what it means, or looking at the data, not sure what to do with it. It just becomes apparent. That stuff that's not even a question anymore. You'll just know what to do because your numbers, your measurements will tell you where to focus next. But that only happens when you adopt this marketing forward concept. All right. So what was your one thing through this? Was it just that idea of, okay, baking and business are kind of related in a way, right? They both have ingredients. They both mix the ingredients together. And in the beginning, at least with business, you typically ask what happened. Bakers typically don't. They know to use a recipe. But for some reason, that never translates into business. Business didn't realize that. Marketers typically don't realize that. They don't have a definition of what good looks like. They weren't doing forecasts. But now you know. And you can't unsee that, hopefully, this concept of marketing forward. So now you can actually start to build that. Now, if you want to get your win on, if you are not yet a member of measurementmarketing.io, definitely encourage you to check us out. Measure.tips/courses will take you there. In particular, you can get these packs or you can get them all. There's a little, all-you-can-eat plan as well. The Data Studio ones will cover a little bit as far as how to build the dashboards that I showed you. The measurement strategy is the one that actually has the forecasting revenue results, and it's got a power planner and everything else in there. So lots of fun stuff in there if you are interested in learning more about this. Also, as you go through here, next week's topic is going to be a features and updates one. We do that the first Wednesday of every month. So it's our What's New section coming out. In this case, we're going to go back and we're going to look at the month of May. In the first Wednesday of June, we will look at the month of May and say, okay, here's all the changes that came out in Google Analytics, in Facebook Analytics, if any, if Tag Manager, Data Studio, whatever the new updates are, we will let you know so that you can start taking advantage of those. Just a reminder to make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get those there as well. And YouTube will send you out alerts so that you don't miss any of the workshops. So please do take a moment to subscribe. Finally, the Measurement Marketing Toolbox. Now, of course, all the workshop Wednesdays are back there. Workshops like this, they're back there in the members area, but we also have all these tools and then some. Now, this is a small fraction of the tools. There's about 40 different tools that are back there. A lot of them are ones that we have created that are proprietary. There's others back there as well that we love in terms of extensions and shortcuts and tips and everything else. It is called our Toolbox membership, and it is entirely free. So if you are not yet a member, but you're not quite ready to pay for something yet, that's totally fine. We offer this as a way to help build the community, as a thank you for all of you for supporting us throughout the years. So Measurement Marketing Toolbox, it is completely free. Just go to measure.tips/WW. You can sign up, create your free membership, and you'll have access to all of those tools as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and bring this one to a close. This has been a strategy session, the power of marketing forward. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.